After a long awaited list, at number one on the iconic 100 list is the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card. And here today to talk about the card with us and how iconic it is Yanks Chick on Instagram and Twitter, Susan LaJudi. Suze, what do you think? Card number one. Do you think that they got it right?
Yeah, I think there was no other card, maybe one, but no other card that deserved that number one spot for sure.
What would your other card be that you kind of would compare it to?
The Wagner would be the only other one that could contend for the number one spot.
I personally had the Wagner number one and I had the Mantle number two, and that's no disrespect, zero disrespect to this card, because I wrestled really like which is more iconic. I mean, to me, these two are easily one and two in my opinion. You know, that might not be what other people think, but to me, these are the two most recognizable and important baseball cards of all time. And I think they're the two most iconic cards of all time. Did you go with the Mantle over the Wagner?
I think I did.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure I put Mantle as number one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna check real quick for you. You did put Mantle number one, so you got it right. You know, you got the way that the market views it the same way. What gives the Mantle the edge? What makes it the most iconic card ever made?
It is. Well, I know it's tough because it's like you could say these things, and the Wagner also is like part of, but like it is the most recognizable trading card, not baseball, not football. It is the most recognizable trading card like in history. I can show this card to my mother and she would know what it was. And my mom, for me, is like that litmus point. Like it's like if she knows what something is, then it must be popular. And I could show this card to my mother and she would know what it was. But then there's the history, right? There's the story behind this card. And I think that's also like, not to reiterate the Wagner, but that the story behind the Wagner is what makes it so special, you know? So then the story behind the 52 Mantle is what also makes it really incredible. You know, the story of like, it was a high number series and Topps was not selling this well. So, you know, instead of more marketing and trying to push for it, Cyberg is like, let's dump it in the bay, right? Like we're gonna go dump this in the water and it's gonna go float away forever and I'm never gonna have to worry about these cards again. And because of that, they became the legend, helped make this card incredible. But then it's also the subject, Mickey Mantle, you know, also an incredible player, but such a popular player. Like not just Yankee fans, baseball fans absolutely loved him. And it was the first Topps set, and being the first Topps set and having that like cachet of the first Topps card, all of these things just add up to make it the most iconic card.
Yeah, I think we could definitely talk about this one for days. The thing that you just drew forward that I think is really interesting is that both this and the Honus have just this incredible backstory. Right. With the Wagner, it's the fact that the card, you know, was basically pulled and it wasn't supposed to exist. Right. There weren't supposed to be the copies that got out that they got out. And with the Mantle, like there's this wonderful story, and you can just see this image in your mind of people dumping like cases of this product, like cases that would someday be worth millions and millions of dollars. They were throwing them away. Right. That to me is part of the lore of why the card is iconic as it is. And both of them also have this commonality that the card is just, you look at it and you just see it's a beautiful piece of cardboard, but particularly the Mantle. And I think if I was going to make an argument why that card would be, you know, maybe ahead of the Wagner, one of the things that I would start with in that argument is the sort of recognition of how beautiful the card is. You can see Mickey, you can see that color that's behind him and the bat and the way that he's looking at every part of it. You know, we've seen the card made into everything. We've seen it made into t-shirts, and we've seen it made into, you know, since I was a kid, I've seen it. And then to know that it is not his rookie card, and yet it still holds this spot as like the Topps card, the most recognizable card from the most recognizable set of the most recognizable player, probably the most collected player in the history of collecting. It's hard to see. It's hard to, in that way, it's hard to actually make an argument that something else should be ahead of it, because the name Mantle or the name Wagner, I think that tips the scales to Mantle. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But yeah, I'm glad to see it, to see the end of the list, end this way, because I think it's that great of a card. Have you ever owned a copy by chance?
No, it always was one of those things where like, it was always like out of my reach price wise, because like, for whatever they were worth. And I've seen a bazillion of them. I mean, like I've seen a lot of them, not a bazillion, because like there's not a ton of them, but
Right.
I go to New York card shows. I remember being at one of the White Plains card shows, and a guy had just had a case of them stacked in there, right? Just
Wow.
like if he had 100, I wouldn't be surprised. Like he had a lot. And but at the time, like I couldn't afford it. But then like as I got older and I made more money, cards also cost more money. And then like I still couldn't afford them. And now, now they're just
Now they're
completely
gone.
out of reach.
Yeah, I remember, and I haven't collected baseball in a long time. I collected a little bit of vintage baseball when I was younger. I remember at the time where the vintage, where the Mantle 52 and a really low grade was a few grand. And I remember thinking, that's kind of cool. I should probably get one of those. And now it's like, they're just so darn expensive. And but that's what happens to iconic cards, right? Everybody, even people who don't know baseball, even people who don't know the Yankees, even people who don't collect, even your mom says, like, they know what the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card is, and that's not going to change. People say, oh, like someday maybe baseball won't be popular and this card won't be popular. I'm going to tell you right now, even if baseball was not a thing anymore, that card will always be like one of the most recognizable, one of the most iconic cards in the history of our hobby.
Yeah, I agree. And we mentioned that like we say like it's not his rookie card because it's not technically his rookie card. But part of like the legend and part of like the lore of this card is that everybody calls it his rookie card, right? Because it was his first Topps card, and people forget about the 51 Bowman. So, this card is literally taken on like sort of it's a life of its own and has made its own history. It's the rookie card because everybody says it is, and not because it technically is not, but because everybody says it's his rookie card. It's now his rookie card. Like it's special in that way.
I'm glad for how this list is finished off. I'm glad that you were our final guest. I want to thank you. I want to thank all of the guests that we've had be part of the iconic 100 list. It's been a ton of fun for us. As I look back at these last 100 cards, the thing that I really think about is, how is this list going to change? It is what it is right now. The 150 people who voted on it decided that this would be the number one card and that these would be the last 100. But that is always changing. Our hobby is always changing, and how we perceive what is great in the hobby, it's always changing. And so, I'd like to think that we'll do this list again at some point, but if not, we're grateful that we've been able to present it to you, and thank you all for joining us along the way. And until our next adventure, happy collecting.